Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. John Riosti, American banker, thank you so much for joining us. John, I know this is a slow time in Washington, D.C., so you have a couple of extra hours to spend with us.
Yes.
How late were you up last night working on this story?
Well, there had been word that this was going to be released last night, so we started beforehand. We did a lot of pre-reporting, and we had about 75% of our story written. So I didn't stay up terribly late. I was just thinking by 8:30 or by 7:30 or 8 at the latest, there would be something out, or it would just be nothing, given what happened in the city yesterday. And so the last time I checked was about 9:15, and I didn't see any Eastern time for me. I didn't see any indications, so I signed off at that point. Didn't stay up terribly.
Probably wise. Poor Katie. Katie, you thought you were at school and cramming for finals and cramming for how many pages did you end up reading, Katie?
I am through, I don't know, about half of this right now, and I'm still going to have to probably spend another half hour on it at least to really understand the whole thing. There's a lot of pages of this, and it's a lot to process.
Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us, and Katie, you too. Let's go into what we do know. First thing we're going to start is poll questions, and this actually came from a district office that reached out to their lenders, so we thought we would steal it and answer it for them. So what the district office wants to know, one of the local ones at SBA, will your lending institution participate in this new round of PPP loans? John, what are we calling this? Are we calling this 2.0, second draw, 3.0? Do we have an official terminology yet for what this entity is?
There's no sort of official terminology. I'm sort of calling it the second act or 2.0.
Ooh, second act. I like that. That's not as good as the British bounce back, but the second act. Okay. Well, 75% said yes, they will participate. 12% they'll do it in some manner. 5% said we're washing our hands of the whole deal. And 10% have a wait and see. John, Katie, does that sort of in line with what your thinking is and the people you're talking to?
I guess it's roughly in line. In our story today, that's online, I talked to Customers Bank. I guess I can mention that because it's in the story. And they noted that they have a white label service that they're offering to lenders. So I expect they said they've had some takers already, some large institutions as well. So I expected there to be some, degree of non-participation. I thought it might be a little bit more, but that certainly seems in line, that there's a significant number of institutions that, want to be more hands-off or more arm's length from PPP.
When you say, you sort of cut out for me, did you say it was a private label type situation?
Yes, exactly. I apologize for that.
Okay, tell me more about that.
I guess they've talked to and they've heard enough comment from institutions, that are reluctant to be as full a participant in PPP this time, that they decided they were going to offer their platform, which is, they worked very hard on it. They had 102,000 loans the first time, so they have a pretty fully developed platform. Offer it to other institutions that don't want to be as involved. And they said, any degree of white label, either we'll do everything for you and we'll pay you a referral fee, or we'll do, any
whatever you want. Interesting.
So they emphasize flexibility, and they said that they have a 50 billion asset customer, and they said they have an arrangement with one of the largest banks in the country. It's sort of they use the term top 5 bank, where that institution will refer some but not all of its clients to them.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, so for those of you who answered no for the 5%, there are options you may want to consider, and obviously we're still waiting. We're going to talk about that. Purpose of today's program is simply to tell you what we know, and we're still waiting for other stuff to drop. But let's go ahead and go into this one. Second question from the SBA district office. If you're not offering PPP now, do you expect you will offer PPP at some future point if conditions change? It says, yeah, we're going to do it. We're not going to do it, or I don't know. And similar type, 58% said we're going to do it in the future. Again, we have that 5 to 7% that said we're not going to touch it. And hopefully there will be more guidance to those lenders who are reluctant. John, one of the questions I came up with and I scratched it was, I mean, even though it's late, we still need this stuff.
Oh yeah, tremendous amount of demand. That's one thing that came clear from everyone I talked to, that there's a tremendous amount of demand. For those institutions that may or may not be, that are sort of on the fence and might plan to jump in later, as of now, and this may change, I suspect it will change, they only have till March 31st. That's when the window for new originations, and I believe it covers both first and second draws, that's when it closes.
Let's go through these numbers real quick. I think these are numbers everyone wants to know. What was the average PPP loan size of the first draw? And Katie, I'm going to turn this over to you because you know the answer, and we'll find out how our audience, how did our audience do, Katie?
You might have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the 100,000.
Well, we'll let that go. It was 101,000.
101. Okay.
But yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to point out, John, is that people, the basic things in terms of what the numbers are, we still as an industry don't have a good handle of what exactly is happening.
No, there are a lot of unanswered questions in this, including perhaps the biggest is when will the portals open and when can the lenders lend and the borrowers borrow?
Hold on to that thought. Let's go to number 4, and then we will go to portals, Star Trek episodes. What percentage of PPP loans have been made to businesses with fewer than 10 employees? This obviously encompasses the first draw or the first act. I mean, we made like,
I don't know this one.
70%.
Really?
Which is quite a bit. All right, John, tell us what's going on with Star Trek and portals, and how do we get this done?
Well, I think by now it's the rules are widely available. The first one, and I was trying to add up the pages in my head. I had the number of pages in the second IFR wrong. I thought it was 47, but it's over 120 pages of material, so there's quite a bit. There's a summary attached to that, which details sort of the services and the benefits that SBA wants to offer both small lenders and borrowers, but not a lot of other summary documents. But as I said before, some of the key information is absent there, the information that you'll look for, you being a borrower or a lender, which is when do the portals open? Where are the form, like for instance, the form for the streamlined forgiveness? That's not public yet.
And we know that, I guess the numbers floating around, I've been told it's 2483/SD, but no one's been able to find that yet, and it hasn't been released yet. And we don't, as you said, John, we don't have dates. And I know that the legislation, there were different calendar dates or different dates that SBA had to respond to, but obviously this is still a situation that's in flux.
Yeah. One interesting thing, I was struck, I hadn't realized it was this big, but I was reading some of the summary parts of the IFR, and it noted that there were 23 interim final rules that came out after the first rule on April 2nd. I didn't realize it was that high. So I started tracking the dates of those, and I noted, that there several times there was an interim final rule and then another right after that. So it's quite possible that tomorrow or I would imagine the latest Monday, there might be a second interim final rule that will answer all these questions.
Yeah, I agree. And I would have lost that bet, John. I would have said, if you guys said there were 23, I would have said, no, there were a lot more. So for me, 23 was a low number. Katie, SBA has also said that they're having an emphasis on accessing capital for the 4 underserved markets, which are minority, veteran, economic impacted, and women-owned businesses. But it tends to be in buckets, and there's nothing really different from those 4 buckets than a traditional PPP loan. Is there that from what I see, Katie?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's mostly that they're just focusing on making sure lenders have the ability to lend to these groups and an emphasis on those groups. So they are planning on opening the portal for first draw a little bit earlier for some of those smaller lenders that do focus on these groups, and make some changes like that to make sure that those groups are represented in this next round.
Well, let's go through the fourth. Some of the major points is it does not address in terms of payments, does it, John, in terms of what payments are forgiven and whether it's retroactive or going forward on these PPP loans? Excuse me.
No, I don't think there's any new data like that. It just, I mean, the big key in there is at some point we're going to get the forms and the mechanism for the streamlining of 100.
Yeah. In terms of the guaranteed percentages, Katie, no retroactive. We're assuming that it's going to be effective at the date of the subsequent IFRs that come out.
Right. So they're saying, at least from what I'm reading in this IFR, is it sounds like it's going to be from the date that this program starts. I'm not seeing anything retroactive. Of course, the SBA could change that in a future IFR, but currently that's what it's reading.
Okay, very good. Let's see. We have some questions left over from yesterday. John, do you want to touch on the agent situation, or we beat that topic to death? Is that still? I know there are people that are pushing on this, but is that for the second act? Is that going to be an issue?
I don't think it'll be an issue. I think the language in the it's a law now, the stimulus law, was very clear on that barring some sort of agreement entered into beforehand between a lender and an agent, there's going to be no avenue for an agent to seek compensation, and it's pretty clear on that. It's where even agents who believe and probably did do substantive and constructive work in assisting their borrower clients, if they didn't get the agreement made beforehand, it looks like they're out of luck.
Good. And I agree with that. I think that makes sense. We don't know yet. Also, I'm fuzzy on dates, and so we're going to be fuzzy on these dates until, as you said, John, we get specific how to do this stuff. When is it? I love when you and I started the conversation was, well, when does this become effective? Well, that's an obvious question, which I didn't ask.
And here's a question about lender fees. That's a very good question. I had not seen yet any different fees, fee breakdown for first draw and second draw. All that means is I haven't seen it yet, which
I think for the smaller loans, there's a little bit of a bump, but for the larger,
that applies to both draws. I haven't seen a separate fee schedule for second draw loans, I guess is what I'm saying.
But we have
right, I'm not seeing that either.
Go ahead, Katie. I'll cut you off, please.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just confirming what John was saying. I just read through that section and I didn't see any change. Of course, they could change it in the future, but I didn't see any change between the first and second draw. I think they're both the same rules.
Right.
Yeah. I know we've put to bed the issue of the taxes, so that's no longer an issue, correct, John?
That's no longer an issue.
Yeah, so the small business borrower is not going to be double taxed from that. Any comment on the guidance to lenders in terms of they have to act in good faith? Have you picked anything up on that other than what's in the original language, or is that sort of pro forma as it was in the first draw?
I haven't picked up it. I mean, we're waiting for a lot of sort of clarity from SBA on that, and I suspect it'll come from the forms. But there's a new aspect of this. We were talking about in the past. We've been talking about certification for the sake of forgiveness. Now we're talking about certification for the sake of applying or qualifying rather for a second draw loan. The loans above $150,000, they're going to have to produce either tax information or financial statements, but they're going to have to produce hard data and proof to show that they have a 25% reduction in revenue in any one of the 4 quarters of 2020.
But we think for loans less than 150, John,
it'll be a streamlined application process that will involve a simple certification. But that's not out yet. So
yeah. And I think that's something that we'll take a good hard look at. We've got a number of questions regarding dates and times and whatever, and I don't want to speculate on that. It was 8 weeks in quarter to quarter, and as we go through this stuff, we'll become clear on that. But I'm with you, John. I want to start seeing some of these forms that go in. Let's see. Brian said, hey, there's other companies out there that are doing white labels for PPP processing. How do we get a plug to? Brian from World Trade Center. I don't know. World Trade Finance. Brian, I don't know how you get a plug on that. No, of course. Yeah. The point is there are other companies that are doing that as well.
Yes. Yeah. I talked to 2. I'm sorry. I apologize that I talked to more, but
no, there are companies. Hey, this is an interesting question, and I think it's appropriate. Max says, this is fine and dandy, and this is all going to be sorted out, but anybody talking about Main Street Lending Program?
My
I
understanding.
certainly haven't heard too much about that. I know they extended it for 8 days, so I think we're coming up on the end of that tomorrow, I believe. But I haven't heard any extension so far.
And I haven't either.
So the answer is very little discussion is on that. I from what reading the tea leaves, John and Katie, I do see a sense of that this is another step. There will be another step. They're talking additional stimulus. They're talking about additional things. And I do not perceive this situation running out of cash. If there is, Congress certainly has the appetite, and the new administration certainly has the appetite to show they're willing to provide additional resources to help solve this. But I'm with you, John. I mean, I'm one of these that this should have been done 6 months ago, but hey, we got it done. There's a lot of people hurting. We all have our stories, and it's about time we get this. And you could choose whatever numbers you want. But overall, let's summarize this. Overall, I'm glad we're here. I'm optimistic. And what do the 2 of you think?
I'll jump in. I think the second draw loans will be a bellwether. I think I'm suspecting that's where the most of this money will end up being spent on the second draw loans. And if the pool, which I think totals PPP pool, which totals about $285 billion, if that's all used up really, really quickly, then you're right. There will be additional stimulus because right now there are none of the drawbacks that probably kept a lot of businesses out of PPP during the summer. None of the issues about taxes or anything like that. None of the issues about idle advances. They've all been ironed out. There's, the money is now free of all the strings that were attached then. So we'll have to see, what the need is. And I suspect, the bankers I've talked to believe it's substantial.
Yeah, and comparing to the numbers that we're talking about, compared to the historical program, I mean, it swamps it. It swamps it, Katie. The numbers are just astronomical in what's out there, and I'm glad to see there is an appetite in both the lending community as well as the congressional communities to make this as simple as possible.
Yes.
Well, thank you both for your insights. Thank you all for supporting us. Obviously, we'll be, as soon as these forms hit and we get additional guidance, we'll do that. John, if you're not doing anything next Thursday, I'd love to have you come back.
That's where I'll be, yes.
And keep up the good work. And thank you all for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street. One
Thank you.
entrepreneur at a time. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.